I already signed the papers. That was the first sentence my wife said when I walked through the front door carrying groceries. I actually laughed because I thought she was joking. We had spent almost 15 years making every important decision together. We debated paint colors for weeks before repainting the living room. We argued over which dishwasher to buy. We couldn't even agree on where to order pizza without discussing it first. So hearing that she'd apparently signed papers without me sounded ridiculous. What papers? I asked. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. The purchase agreement. We're moving. Not I'd like us to move. Not what do you think? Just, we're moving. For a few seconds I honestly believed I had missed months of conversations. Maybe I'd forgotten something. Maybe stress from work had scrambled my memory. What are you talking about? I finally managed. She calmly took a folder from the kitchen counter and slid it toward me. Our new house. My name wasn't on a single page. I remember staring at those documents longer than I looked at our wedding certificate. I kept flipping through the paperwork, convinced the missing signatures had to be some kind of mistake. They'll add my name later, right? I asked, trying to sound calm. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she poured herself a glass of water and avoided looking at me. The mortgage is only in my name, she finally said. It was easier that way. Easier for who? For us. That answer made no sense. We'd shared every bill since we got married. We planned vacations together, budgeted together, worried about money together. Suddenly, she was talking like I wasn't part of the equation anymore. I asked where this house even was. About 3 hours away. 3 hours. Far enough that I'd have to leave my job, my friends, and the neighborhood where we'd raised our daughter. When were you planning to tell me? I am telling you. The conversation felt unreal. She spoke with rehearsed confidence, while I struggled to catch up. It was like she'd been living in a different version of our marriage for months, and I had only just been invited into it. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed the conversation, searching for the moment where it should have gone differently. By morning, I wasn't just confused, I was looking for explanations. The first thing I noticed was how protective she'd become of her phone. It never left her hand anymore. Even when she showered, she carried it into the bathroom. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then I remembered all the little things I'd ignored over the past few months. The unexplained late meetings. Weekend trips she called work retreats. The sudden interest in dressing differently. New perfume that she insisted she'd always worn. I'd accepted every excuse because I trusted her. That afternoon I called our daughter, hoping she'd know something. Oh, she said quietly. Mom told me you already knew. My stomach dropped. Knew what? She hesitated just long enough to terrify me. I thought she told you why we're moving. There was something in her voice, fear, maybe guilt, that made me realize this wasn't just about a new house anymore. Something much bigger had been hidden from me. I asked my daughter to tell me everything, but she immediately started crying. I don't want to be in the middle of this, she whispered. That sentence hit me harder than anything else. Kids don't say things like that unless they've already been standing in the middle for a long time. What did your mother tell you? I asked as gently as I could. She said you'd understand eventually. Understand what? My daughter kept apologizing, saying she thought I already knew. She admitted Mom had been taking her to see the new house for weeks. They picked out paint colors together. They even chose furniture for the bedrooms. I wasn't invited once. When I hung up, I realized everyone around me seemed to know about our future except me. That evening my wife came home unusually cheerful. We should start packing this weekend, she said. I looked at her and asked the question that had been eating at me all day. Who else knows about this besides you, our daughter, and me? Her smile disappeared. Instead of answering, she simply said, this doesn't have to become a fight. That was the moment I knew she was hiding far more than a house. I couldn't let it go anymore. The next morning, after she left for work, I opened our shared laptop. We had always used the same browser, and she rarely logged out of anything. I wasn't looking for proof of an affair. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Her email was still open. Most of it was ordinary utility bills, work messages, advertisements. Then I noticed a folder labeled Closing. Inside were dozens of emails about the house. Realtors, inspectors, movers, insurance agents. The conversations stretched back almost 8 months. 8 months. She hadn't made one impulsive decision. She had built an entirely new future while smiling across the dinner table from me every night. Then one email caught my attention. "I'll make sure he's gone before the move. Don't worry." There was no signature, only a first name, Daniel. I read the sentence again and again, hoping I'd misunderstood it. Gone where? Gone from the house? Or gone from her life? For the first time, the possibility that another man was involved stopped feeling like paranoia and started feeling terrifyingly real. I must have read that email 20 times. Maybe Daniel was a realtor. Maybe a contractor. Maybe "I'll make sure he's gone" referred to a tenant or even a piece of furniture. My brain kept inventing harmless explanations because the alternative felt impossible. Then I searched the name. There weren't many emails, but the ones that existed were personal. "Can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore. She keeps asking questions. Just a little longer." None of them mentioned me directly, but they didn't have to. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the laptop. When my wife came home that evening, I acted normal. I hated myself for pretending, but I needed to know how far this really went. She kissed my cheek like always. Asked how my day had been. Complained about traffic. Every word sounded rehearsed. As she walked into the bedroom, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She rushed back almost instantly, grabbed it before I could even glance at the screen, and forced a smile. Just work. For the first time in our marriage, I knew she was lying without needing a single word of proof. 2 days later, I stopped pretending. She came home carrying moving boxes she'd bought on the way from work and started stacking them in the hallway like everything was perfectly normal. I asked her to sit down. "We need to talk about Daniel." She froze. Not for long, just a second, but it was enough. "I don't know what you're talking about. I've seen the emails." The color drained from her face. She looked at me with a mix of panic and anger, as if I'd broken some unspoken rule. "You went through my email? Answer the question." She stood up and started pacing. "You had no right." "I had every right when my wife buys a house without telling me." Silence. Finally, she whispered, "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." Those words shattered the last bit of hope I was holding on to. "So there is a Daniel." She closed her eyes. "Yes." Just one word. No excuses. No denial. It felt like all the air had disappeared from the room. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I just sat there, staring at the woman I trusted more than anyone, realizing I had no idea who she really was anymore. "What is he to you?" I finally asked. She covered her face with both hands and stayed silent for what felt like forever. "Please say something." When she looked up, her eyes were already full of tears. "I didn't plan this," she whispered. "It just happened." I laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. People don't accidentally buy houses together. She flinched. That was all the answer I needed. "We've been seeing each other for almost a year," she admitted. I tried to end it more than once. Almost a year. While we celebrated birthdays. While we hosted Christmas dinner. While we smiled in family photos that still sat on our mantel. Does our daughter know? No. Then why was she helping you choose rooms? Because I told her we needed a fresh start. I felt physically sick. So the move wasn't for us. She shook her head, barely able to speak. No. It was for you and him. She didn't deny it. The silence that followed hurt more than any confession could have. Sometimes the truth doesn't arrive in dramatic speeches. Sometimes it arrives in the things a person no longer tries to argue with. I asked the question I had been avoiding since this nightmare began. Does he know you're married? She nodded. He knows everything. Everything. That meant every anniversary post she'd shared online. Every family barbecue. Every picture of the three of us smiling on vacation. He knew I existed, and it hadn't stopped either of them. What did you tell him about me? She stared at the floor. That we'd grown apart. I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. We eat dinner together almost every night. I know. We planned our daughter's college fund together. I know. We were talking about renovating the kitchen last month. I know. Each answer felt colder than the last. So you were living two completely different lives. She started crying again. I never wanted to hurt you. I stood up so quickly my chair crashed onto the floor. Then why didn't you leave before starting another relationship? She couldn't answer. Instead, she whispered the only honest thing she'd said all evening. Because I was afraid of being alone. That confession somehow hurt even more than the affair itself. It made me wonder if I had ever been loved or if I had simply been convenient. The next morning, I packed a suitcase without really thinking about what I was putting into it. A few shirts. My laptop. A framed photo of my parents. I skipped every picture of us because I couldn't bear to look at them anymore. She stood in the doorway, watching. You don't have to leave, she said quietly. I looked around the house we'd built together, and for the first time it didn't feel like mine. I think I already did, I replied. I stayed with my older brother that night. I barely slept. Every time my phone vibrated, I hoped it would be a message saying she'd made a terrible mistake, that she'd ended things with Daniel, that we could somehow rewind the last year. Instead, my daughter called. She had found one of the moving boxes in the garage. Inside were framed photos of my wife and me. Every single picture had been wrapped in newspaper. Dad, she asked through tears, was Mom planning to erase us? I didn't know how to answer. Because, deep down, I was beginning to wonder the same thing. A week later, my wife asked if we could meet somewhere neutral. We chose a small coffee shop halfway between my brother's house and ours. Calling it ours still slipped out without thinking. She looked exhausted. The confidence she'd shown when she announced the move was gone. I've ended things with Daniel, she said before I even sat down. I waited for the relief that should have come. It never did. Why? I asked. He realized this wasn't what he wanted. The words landed like another betrayal. So he left you. She lowered her eyes. I guess. I couldn't stop myself from laughing, and I hated the sound of it. It was bitter, hollow, nothing like me. So you didn't choose our marriage. She started crying. You were his second choice, and now I'm supposed to be yours? People at nearby tables glanced toward us, but neither of us cared. I know I don't deserve another chance, she whispered. For a long moment, I just looked at the woman I'd once trusted with every part of my life. The saddest realization wasn't that I couldn't forgive her. It was that I no longer recognized the person asking. The divorce process was strangely quiet. There were no screaming matches in court, no dramatic scenes, no endless fights over furniture. On paper, it looked like two reasonable adults ending a marriage with dignity. Reality was nothing like that. Every document I signed felt like another piece of my life being erased. We divided the bank accounts, the retirement savings, and years of accumulated memories as if they were just numbers on a spreadsheet. Our daughter tried to stay neutral, but I could see the weight she carried. She visited both of us, careful not to mention one parent while she was with the other. One evening she admitted something that broke my heart. I keep wondering if I should have told you sooner. I reached across the table and took her hand. You were protecting your mom. I was scared. I know. The truth was that I had failed to notice how much pressure she'd been under. While I believed our family was stable, she'd been carrying secrets no child should ever have to carry. That realization still keeps me awake some nights. It's been 3 years now, and people assume time fixes everything. It doesn't. Time just teaches you how to function around the damage. I bought a small townhouse closer to work. It's quiet, almost too quiet. Sometimes I catch myself setting the table for two before remembering there's no one coming home. My ex never moved into the house she bought. After Daniel left, she sold it at a loss. Friends told me that should feel like justice. It didn't. Nothing about this felt like winning. Our daughter graduated from college last spring. We both attended the ceremony, sitting several rows apart. We smiled for the photographs because that was easier than explaining the truth to relatives. For a few minutes, we looked like a normal family again. Then everyone went their separate ways. My ex tried apologizing once more before she left. I thanked her for saying it. But apologies don't rebuild trust. They don't erase late-night lies, hidden emails, or the memory of discovering that your entire future had been rewritten without you ever being asked. The hardest part isn't that my marriage ended. It's that I still question my own memories. I'll remember a vacation and wonder if she was texting him while we watched the ocean. I'll think about our anniversary dinner and ask myself whether she was already planning a life somewhere else. Every happy memory now comes with an invisible asterisk. People tell me I was too trusting. Maybe I was. But I don't think loving your spouse should require constant suspicion. I don't want to believe that checking phones, reading messages, and expecting betrayal is the only way to protect yourself. I've started dating again, slowly. Whenever someone takes too long to answer a text or changes plans at the last minute, I feel that old panic creeping back. They haven't done anything wrong, but my mind immediately fills in the worst possible story. I'm working on it. Some days are better than others. Healing, I've learned, isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about refusing to let someone else's choices become the blueprint for the rest of your life. I still think about the sentence that started all of this. I already signed the papers. At the time, I thought she was talking about a house. Now I realize she was talking about our marriage, too. She had made the decision long before she ever spoke the words. By the time I heard them, I was the last person to find out my own life had changed. I don't hate her anymore. Hate takes too much energy, and I spent enough of my life carrying emotions that weren't helping me move forward. What stays with me is something quieter. If the person you love suddenly stops including you in ordinary decisions, don't dismiss it as stress or bad timing. Distance rarely appears overnight. It grows one small secret at a time until one day you realize you're living beside a stranger. I wish I'd noticed sooner. Maybe nothing would have changed. Maybe everything would have. I'll never know. What I do know is that trust isn't destroyed in a single moment. It's chipped away in silence, hidden plans, and conversations that never happen. And sometimes the deepest betrayal isn't the affair itself, it's discovering that your voice stopped mattering long before you realized you were no longer being heard.